I knew something was wrong the second I opened the door. The house smelled like rosemary and lemon. Soft jazz played from the speakers. Candles flickered on the table like little pieces of gold. It looked perfect, too perfect. The kind of perfect that doesn't happen by accident. Emily stood in the kitchen in a red dress I hadn't seen in years. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Hey," she said, light and sweet. "You're just in time." I smiled back, pretending not to notice the tension hanging in the air. "Smells amazing," I replied. "It's your favorite," she said, setting 2 plates down, her voice calm. Maybe too calm. If you had seen us from the outside, you'd think we were happy. Beautiful home. Great careers. 10 years of marriage. The kind of couple people point to and say, they've got it all figured out. But here's the truth: perfection is often the mask people wear right before everything falls apart. And that night, I was about to see what kind of perfection Emily had been hiding behind. We sat at the table, and everything felt rehearsed. The glasses were already filled, the napkins folded in sharp triangles. The lighting was soft, the playlist perfectly timed. It was all too controlled. She asked about my day. I gave short answers. I asked about hers. She gave shorter ones. Every word felt measured, as if she was reading from a script she didn't quite believe. "How did your meeting go?" I asked. "Fine," she replied, keeping her eyes on her plate. "Everything's on track." On track. For what, I wondered. There was a time when dinner meant laughter, teasing, little arguments about nothing. Now it was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, but hollow. A silence that said more than any words could. I watched her carefully. The way her fork touched the plate, how she avoided eye contact, how she smiled just long enough to look polite. Something inside me knew she was working up to something. Something big. Then came dessert. Chocolate pie, my favorite. She placed it in front of me with a gentle smile, the same one she used to wear when she wanted to soften bad news. And then she reached into her bag, a white envelope. Plain, clean, deliberate. She set it on the table and slid it across, her hand trembling just slightly. "Mark," she said softly, "I think this is for the best." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The candles flickered. The music felt too cheerful. And I just stared at the envelope. I didn't open it right away. I didn't have to. I already knew what it was. Divorce papers. I looked up at her. She met my eyes, steady, almost relieved. She thought she was taking control, ending something she believed she had already won. But what she didn't know was that I had seen this coming long before tonight. I stayed quiet. My face calm. My heart steady. Because I'd already lived through the shock weeks ago, alone, when I found the first clue. It was a Tuesday night. She said she was working late. I was looking for my phone charger when I saw her tablet light up on the desk. A message. From someone named Ryan. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. He won't suspect a thing." At first I froze. Then I laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief. That quiet, bitter laugh you let out when your heart doesn't know whether to break or burn. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't shout. Instead, I started listening, really listening. The next few days, I watched every move, every excuse, every smile. I noticed how she started dressing differently. How she hid her phone during dinner. How she always seemed elsewhere. It's strange. You think you'll lose your mind when you discover betrayal. But sometimes, it gives you clarity instead. So sitting at that dinner table, with the envelope in front of me, I wasn't the same man she thought I was. I wasn't blindsided anymore. I was ready. I opened the envelope slowly, page by page, reading the neat, legal words she'd prepared for weeks. It was all there, the request, the terms, the date. She'd already signed her name, like a period at the end of a sentence she'd written without me. I closed it, set it back down, and took another bite of dessert. Chocolate pie, I said quietly. Still my favorite. She looked confused. Mark, she said, aren't you going to say something? I met her eyes and smiled, not out of warmth but peace. Not tonight, I said softly. Enjoy your dessert. In that moment, I saw doubt flicker in her expression for the first time. She expected anger. She expected tears. What she didn't expect was silence, the kind of silence that meant I wasn't playing her game anymore, because while she spent months planning how to end our marriage, I spent weeks preparing how to end her plan. She just didn't know it yet. I took a slow breath and stood up. The air in the room felt heavier now, like truth had finally walked in. I placed my napkin beside my plate and looked at her one last time that her hands were shaking. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, an apology maybe, or another lie. But I didn't need either. Sometimes you don't win by fighting. You win by knowing when the battle's already over. I gave her a calm nod. She thought she was ending the story, I said quietly. She had no idea. It was just beginning. I used to think our life was steady. Nice home on a quiet street. A small backyard that caught the morning light. 2 coffee mugs on the porch every Saturday. I had a solid job with long hours but good pay. Emily worked part-time at a studio and said she loved the freedom. On paper, we were fine. Better than fine. We looked like a picture frame you'd buy at a store. Stock photo smiles. Nothing out of place. But months before that dinner, things began to shift. Not loudly. Not in ways you could point to and say, there, that's the moment. No, it started like a draft under a door, soft, sneaky, easy to ignore. At first, Emily stopped meeting my eyes when we talked. She'd stare past me, like there was something over my shoulder only she could see. She picked up new routines. A yoga class at 7 in the evening. A networking group that always ran late. And then there were the emergency meetings. I didn't even know a studio needed those. When she got home, she'd go straight to the shower. She used new perfume, something expensive and sweet. It lingered on the collar of her coat and on the passenger seat of her car. I told myself she just wanted change. People change, right? That's allowed. But the distance was no longer emotional drift. It was a line in the sand. The small things became patterns. A new passcode on her phone. Do not disturb turned on at dinner. A second credit card I didn't recognize. Receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of. We had a team event, she'd say. You would have been bored. I smiled and let it pass. I wanted to believe her. Belief is easier than the ache that comes with doubt. One night I heard her in the hallway, whispering. The kind of whisper that isn't about being quiet. It's about not being heard. I got out of bed and stepped into the doorway. She was on the stairs, phone pressed to her ear, voice soft and careful. She looked up, startled. Just ordering something, she said, hanging up like the conversation was over. I nodded. I didn't push. But the truth presses back, even when you try to hold it still. I started paying attention. Not like a detective in a movie, no dramatic confrontations or big scenes. Just a husband taking notes with his eyes and ears, because his heart asked him to. The small inconsistencies formed a rhythm, meetings that ran late. Photos on social media without her wedding ring. A new gym bag packed even on days she didn't go. Then came the night everything tilted. I was looking for a charger in her office. Her tablet lit up, a message preview glowing on the screen like a warning light. Ryan, tomorrow at 4, same place. He's still working late, right? I stared at the name, Ryan. I tried to place him. Friend? Client? Someone from her studio. I wanted to be generous. I wanted to say I misread it. But the words curled around my chest and squeezed. I placed the tablet back where it was. I didn't confront her. Not yet. My first reaction wasn't rage, it was a quiet, heavy sadness. The kind that makes your shoulders drop. The next day, I checked our joint account. Small transfers were moving into a new savings account every week. Not large enough to raise alarms, just enough to be clever. Her spending had changed too. Appointments listed as wellness. Payments to a private number. A retainer fee to a law office in another part of town. That one stopped me cold. I copied the name down on a sticky note and slid it into my wallet. I needed to be sure. I started leaving the office early on certain days. I didn't tell her. I just watched. I watched her car pull into a parking lot I didn't recognize. Watched her sit inside with the engine off and the rearview mirror tilted down so she could fix her lipstick. I watched her walk into a small building with frosted glass. No sign on the door. It didn't look like a studio. It looked like a place where secrets go to sign their names. And then I saw him, Ryan, mid-30s, polished, the kind of man who smiles with his lips but not his eyes. He greeted her at the curb like they had a routine. They didn't touch. Not there. Not outside. But the energy between them said enough. I could have stormed in. I could have caused a scene. But I didn't. That's not my way. I drove to a quiet street and sat with the engine off, hands on the wheel, heart steadying itself like a boxer between rounds. I let the hurt come, and then I let it pass. I didn't want to be the man who breaks things. I wanted to be the man who sees clearly. A week later, I found more. An email draft on her laptop, unsent. We should finalize before he notices. A spreadsheet labeled household with columns for furniture, titles, accounts. Notes like claim neglect, work hours, emotional distance. I recognized those words. They weren't hers. They were legal words. I searched the law office name from the sticky note. Family practice. Aggressive strategy. Known for painting neat pictures in ugly colors. That's when I understood. This wasn't just a broken heart situation. It was a strategy. It wasn't only about Ryan. It was about leverage. The plan was simple: make me look cold, too busy, inattentive. Build a story that cut me out cleanly. Drain me in steps, not with a blow, but with a drip. Keep the house. Split the savings in a way that didn't feel like splitting. Frame my work ethic as abandonment. Turn my calm into a weakness. The realization didn't make me angry. It made me still. And in that stillness, my decisions became clear. I reached out to my own lawyer, a quiet, steady man with a small office and a sharp mind. I gave him everything I had. He listened, asked a few simple questions, and laid out a plan that didn't shout. It just moved. Quiet steps. Clean records. Copies of everything. Dates. Times. No noise. Just truth. Organized out at home, I became careful with my words. I kept dinners calm. I met her rehearsed smiles with gentle nods. When she brought up space, I agreed. When she stayed out late, I told her to drive safe. I wasn't playing along. I was observing. I was waiting for the moment I knew was coming, the night when the envelope would slide across our table like a curtain closing. Did I still love her? That's a strange question. Love doesn't switch off. It dims, it wrestles, it tries to explain what can't be explained. I loved the years we had, the way she used to laugh in the kitchen, the little dance she did when a song she liked came on. But I couldn't save us alone. I couldn't fix a story she had already rewritten without me. The day I finally accepted was the day I stopped being the victim in her version of events. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to fall apart. I was going to stand steady and clear and let the truth do the work. And that's why, when the dinner came and the envelope found my plate, I didn't break. I was ready. Not to destroy her, but to protect myself. Not to fight dirty, but to stand in the light and let the lies fall apart on their own. People think betrayal is loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it sits across from you smiling, asking how your day went. While it counts the steps to the door, when you love someone, you don't see the knife, not until it's already in your back. I didn't explode. I didn't shout. I just adjusted. The day I saw that email about the secret bank account, something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, but it wasn't loud anymore. It became quiet, cold, and focused. That's when I met Jonathan Pierce. His office sat on the edge of town, tucked between a coffee shop and an old bookstore. No glowing sign, no fancy furniture. Just a name on frosted glass and the kind of silence that tells you this man works in truth, not noise. He was older, calm, and precise. When I finished explaining what Emily had done, how the distance started, the messages I found, the lawyer she'd secretly hired, he didn't look shocked. He just leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and said, "Then it's time we make sure she doesn't get what she's after." I remember how steady his voice was. Like a man who's seen too many people lose because they reacted instead of planned. Jonathan became my anchor. Together, we mapped every move. He told me, "This isn't about revenge, Mark. It's about survival. We'll do this clean." We started small, quiet legal moves that no one would notice. I moved my personal savings into a protected account. We documented every shared asset, every house paper, business share, investment copied and time-stamped. I learned to be careful with my digital trail. No late-night emails. No emotional messages. Just quiet, methodical steps. Jonathan kept track of everything in a folder so organized it could have been in a courtroom already. Inside it, screenshots, receipts, statements, even a few photos. Not proof of anger, but proof of truth. Then came the trap. We drafted a response package, documents that would counter anything she filed. They were ready to go the second her lawyer made a move. My lawyer called it protective strategy. I called it insurance. Back home, I played my part. Every word, every gesture measured. I became the husband she believed was too distracted to notice anything. The man who smiled when she mentioned her late meetings. The man who offered to cook dinner when she claimed she was tired. She thought I was trying to save the marriage. But really, I was buying time. I made her breakfast, asked about her day, told her she looked beautiful. Sometimes she'd soften, just for a second before remembering the act she was performing. Her voice would shift back to neutral, like someone turning down a light. It was strange, living with someone who thought she was fooling you. Like sharing a stage with an actor who didn't know you'd already read the script. At night, I'd stand in the hallway watching her type on her phone under the covers. Her face lit by the screen, smiling faintly. Sometimes I wondered if she ever felt guilt, or if she had convinced herself that I deserved what she was doing. I never asked. Questions are invitations to lies, and I had enough of those already. Every Friday, I'd meet Jonathan for coffee instead of in his office. He'd go over updates in a low voice. "Stay calm," he'd say. "She make her move soon. When she does, we respond in one stroke. Until then, be the man she thinks she controls." He was right. Emily had grown comfortable again. Her guard dropped. She laughed more, even hummed while cooking. The tension faded from her shoulders. She thought she was winning, and that made me even more patient. Jonathan liked to call himself the quiet storm. I started calling him my silent weapon. He didn't just build a case. He built a mirror, one that would reflect every lie she told back to her, cleanly, calmly, legally. At home, everything became a performance. She rehearsed her exit. I rehearsed my defense. She played the role of the tired wife who tried her best. I played the patient husband who didn't see it coming. It was almost cinematic. Two people sitting across from each other every evening, smiling like actors in different scenes of the same film. Sometimes she'd mention therapy, or space, or needing clarity. Her voice was full of fake empathy. "I just want what's fair, Mark," she'd say. and I'd nod, pretending to agree. Inside I was thinking, fair is exactly what you'll get. Just not the kind you planned. As days turned into weeks, her timing became predictable. Her absences stretched longer, her excuses shorter. I could sense she was almost ready to end it officially. I too was ready. Jonathan had the files prepped. Our response letters were dated and sealed. Asset protections were locked. Evidence lined up like dominoes waiting for the first to fall. At home, I felt oddly calm. Like a man watching a storm he already built the shelter for. There was one evening she came home humming, her face lit up. She told me she'd had a productive day. I smiled and poured her a glass of wine. If only she knew how much more productive my day had been. The night before the dinner, I stood by the window while she slept. I looked at the moonlight falling across the living room. Everything in that house, the couch, the photos, the books, felt like props now. A stage built for a scene that was about to end. I didn't feel hate anymore. Just clarity. I whispered to myself, tomorrow she thinks she's in control. And for the first time in months, I actually slept peacefully. The next evening arrived exactly as planned. The meal, the music, the red dress. Every detail rehearsed by her, not by me. She believed she was closing the curtain. But what she didn't know was that the curtain had already fallen behind her. As she slid the envelope across the table, smiling that quiet, victorious smile, I didn't flinch. Because my envelope was ready too. The one Jonathan had prepared. The one filled with the truth she tried to bury. The one that would undo every word she thought would destroy me. I looked at her and smiled, not in anger, but in certainty. Because in that moment, I wasn't the betrayed husband anymore. I was the author of the ending. She just hadn't read the last page yet. The papers she handed me were hers to deliver. The ones I gave back were hers to regret. The night had finally arrived. The house looked beautiful, like a movie set for a scene no one would believe. Candles, jazz, her favorite wine already breathing on the counter. Emily called it one last peaceful dinner. She said we deserved closure. But I knew what it really was, her grand performance. Her final act in a play she'd been rehearsing for months. I smiled when she asked if I could be home early. Of course, I said. She wanted the moment to feel gentle, civilized, controlled. She had no idea she was walking straight into her own trap. I arrived right on time, wearing my usual calm. She looked beautiful. She always did when she was pretending. The red dress again. A symbol now. The color of endings disguised as romance. We ate quietly. She kept the conversation light, talked about the weather, her new plans, her next steps. Her tone was smooth, careful, like a dancer afraid to miss a step. Then, halfway through dessert, she exhaled slowly, a practiced sigh, and said, "Mark, I think it's time we stop pretending we're happy." I nodded once. "If that's how you feel." Her eyes flickered, just a fraction. She hadn't expected that. She wanted tears, anger, a scene. What she got instead was peace, the kind that unnerves people who are guilty. I just think. She continued, "We both need to move on, you know? Peacefully. Without hate." "Of course," I said, voice even. "I'm all for peace." The calm in my tone threw her off balance. She glanced down at her purse, hesitated for a second, then pulled out a familiar white envelope. She slid it across the table slowly. Her hand trembled, though she tried to hide it. "It's just paperwork. To make things easier." I looked at the envelope and smiled faintly. "Oh, I see," I said. "You brought yours." Her brows furrowed. "Mine?" I reached into my briefcase and pulled out an envelope of my own, thick, sealed, and stamped. I slid it toward her. "Then it's only fair I bring mine too." Her expression changed instantly. Confusion, curiosity, then slowly realization. "What's this?" she asked, voice tight. Something I've been working on, I said calmly. A few legal documents. You'll want to read them carefully. She opened it with nervous fingers. Inside, pages of evidence, countersigned affidavits, and a legal counterpetition drafted 3 weeks ago by my lawyer, Jonathan Pierce. Her color drained as she flipped through them. What is this? She whispered again, her voice thinner now. Proof, I said softly. Of everything. She looked up, her face pale. You went through my things? No, I said. You left them in plain sight. I just finally stopped pretending not to see them. Her breathing quickened. You don't understand, I do, I interrupted, keeping my tone steady. I understand perfectly. The fake meetings. The secret account. The lawyer you hired in another city. The money transfers. The photos with Ryan. Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out. She reached for words, for excuses, for the soft lies she always used to control the narrative. But this time, there was nothing left to hide behind. I leaned forward slightly. You thought I was blind, Emily, but I was documenting every move. Every call. Every receipt. Camera cuts to him in his office, quietly scanning documents. Screenshots sliding into folders. Dates written neatly in a notebook. Phone recordings time-stamped. Jonathan's calm voice saying, "Be patient. Let her show her hand first." Cut back to the dinner table. Emily's voice cracked. "Mark, I never meant for it to get this far." I tilted my head. "Didn't you? You planned to take everything. The house. The accounts. My company shares. You even prepared statements about me being emotionally distant." Her lips parted, trembling. "Who told you that?" "You did," I said, tapping the folder. "In your own words. Text messages don't lie." She went silent. The only sound was the quiet clinking of the clock on the wall. Each tick felt like a countdown. She tried to steady her tone. "So what now, Mark? You're going to ruin me?" I looked at her for a long moment, then shook my head. "No, you already did that yourself." Outside, Jonathan was waiting in his car, engine idling, briefcase ready. If she thought this was a negotiation, she was mistaken. It was an execution of paperwork, precise, professional, final. I slid my pen across the table. "All I need is your signature," I said quietly. "To confirm you've read my terms." Her hands were shaking. "You can't do this." "I already did," I replied. "Everything's filed. Jonathan's outside with copies ready to deliver to your attorney." Her jaw tightened. "You had this planned?" I looked straight at her and smiled faintly. "I learned from the best." She sat back in her chair, stunned into silence. The woman who once controlled every conversation couldn't form a sentence. Her power gone. Her mask cracked out, her eyes darted around the room, searching for something familiar, something solid. But everything had changed. This was no longer her stage. It was mine. "You wanted peace," I said softly. "Now you have it. You'll keep your share. I'll keep mine. And we'll never have to lie to each other again." She didn't respond, just stared at the papers in front of her, the same ones that exposed every secret she built her betrayal on. Finally she whispered, "You were never supposed to find out." I stood, straightening my jacket. "You're right," I said. "But you made one mistake, Emily. You underestimated silence." As I walked to the door, she called after me, voice trembling. "So that's it? You think this is justice?" I paused, my hand on the door handle. The air was still, thick with the sound of her regret. I turned slightly, meeting her eyes one last time. "Justice doesn't always come with sirens," I said quietly. "Sometimes it arrives in a tailored suit." That night, the world didn't explode. No yelling, no chaos. Just silence, the kind that follows when truth finally does its job. And for the first time in months, I felt free. It's been 6 weeks since that night. The candles burned out, the papers were signed, and the silence that followed became louder than any argument we ever had. Emily moved out 2 weeks later. No dramatic goodbyes, no final speech, just a note on the counter that said, "I'm sorry for everything." No explanation. No closure. Just words written in ink that already meant nothing. The house feels different now, quieter, still, for the first few days. I caught myself waiting for her footsteps, expecting the sound of keys at the door. But all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the old floorboards. And you know what? That silence. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. It was mine. After everything came out, the fallout was quick. Ryan, the man she risked everything for, vanished. Turns out, he had a wife of his own. Once the documents surfaced and his name appeared in the filings, he did what most cowards do, disappeared into the shadows he came from. Her perfect plan collapsed overnight. The lawyer she hired dropped her case when my attorney presented the evidence. Every lie she built was met with proof so sharp it left her speechless. I didn't have to raise my voice. The truth did the talking for me. In the end, I kept the house. The court agreed it was mine before the storm began. She took what was fair, but not what she wanted. And I walked away with something she could never touch: peace. But here's the thing about winning. It doesn't always feel like victory. When the dust settled, I didn't feel proud. I just felt lighter. It wasn't revenge that satisfied me. It was the release from the chaos I'd been living in. Sometimes I sit on the porch at sunset and think back to the early days. The laughter, the road trips, the quiet mornings with coffee and plans that never came true. I wonder how we got from there to here. How love, once warm and certain, turned into something sharp and distant. But then I remind myself, people change. Not always suddenly, not always out of cruelty. Sometimes they just lose themselves, and you have to let them go so you can find yourself again. Life after her has been slow, steady, and quiet, and I've learned to like it that way. I joined a new firm, one where I'm surrounded by people who respect what I do. I adopted a dog, a rescue, nervous at first, just like me. Now every morning we walk around the neighborhood, watching the world wake up. It's strange how healing can come from such small, simple things. I started visiting my sister more too. She told me once, "You don't have to rebuild fast. You just have to rebuild honestly." Those words stuck with me. Because that's what I'm doing. Building a life that's real. Not perfect. Sometimes I still get flashes of her. Not the woman who betrayed me, but the girl I fell in love with years ago. The one who laughed too loud at movies and danced in the kitchen. And for a moment, I almost feel sorry. Almost. But then I remember the look on her face that night when she realized the truth had caught up to her, and the sympathy fades. I've learned something from all this. Revenge doesn't need to be loud or cruel or messy. Sometimes the best revenge is simply outgrowing the person who tried to break you. Now, when I close my eyes at night, there's no anger. No noise, just calm. She built her plan on lies. I built mine on patience, and in the end, patience always wins. You've heard my story, every secret, every silence, every plan. But before this chapter ends, I want to tell you what it really meant. See, revenge isn't what people think it is. It's not about tearing someone down or watching them fall. It's not about proving you're stronger or smarter. Revenge, the kind that matters, is about reclaiming yourself. It's about finding peace after chaos tried to live inside you. The truth is, I didn't destroy her. I just stopped letting her destroy me. For a long time, I carried anger like it was armor, sharp, heavy, impossible to take off. Every night I replayed the lies, the messages, the betrayal. And every time, it ate away a little more of who I used to be. But something changed when I stopped fighting to win and started fighting to heal. Because the moment you let go of hate, you make room for something better. Peace. And peace. That's where true revenge lives. Betrayal can shatter you, or it can sharpen you. The choice is yours. You can let it turn you bitter, or you can let it turn you clear. I chose clarity. Because clarity doesn't need noise or drama, it just needs truth. People ask me sometimes, if you could go back, would you do anything differently? And I tell them no. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. More than I can explain, but because pain has a strange way of teaching you what peace really feels like. If she hadn't broken my trust, I would have kept living half asleep. If she hadn't lied, I might never have learned the strength of staying silent when silence is power. Silence is misunderstood. People think it's weakness, that if you don't shout back, you've lost. But sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes it's the moment right before the truth walks in and does the talking for you, and when it finally does, there's nothing left to say. I won't pretend I came out of this story untouched. I lost things, moments, dreams, pieces of love I can't get back. But I gained something far greater: self-respect, patience, and peace. That's the thing about fire, it burns, yes. But it also clears the ground so something new can grow. And when that new life begins, you realize the fire didn't destroy you. It refined you. Sometimes I still think about that dinner. The way she smiled across the table, confident in her plan. And I smile back now, not with anger, but with understanding. Because that was the night everything changed. Not for the worse, for the better. That was the night I stopped being afraid of losing her, and started learning what it meant to find myself. So, if you've ever been betrayed, if someone's ever taken your trust and twisted it, remember this: you don't need to fight loud to win. You don't need to break someone to rise again. Just move in silence. Stay patient. Let truth do the work, because justice doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it comes with peace. The night she served me papers, I didn't lose my marriage. I found my freedom. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more powerful tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Every week, we bring you real, emotional stories that prove one thing: even in the darkest moments, truth always finds its way to the light.